Thank you guys for tuning into my channel. My name's Alanta. I really appreciate it. So here on my channel, like I mentioned before, I love discussing money, but also more importantly, naturalizing money talks and everything in between. So today I have the man of the hour, pre-cancellation, Lawrence Deva Gonzalez, Mr. Neighborhood Finance himself. So if you are on Instagram or any social media outlets, you may have seen some of his article and posts about personal finance. So he is my mentor, my close friend, pre-cancellation. Pre-cancellation Lawrence. So I did mention in a previous episode of mine, so there's an episode I will try to post a link somewhere that's going to be here somewhere, about how I went from negative $50,000 to a positive network of $200,000. So within that story was actually it mentioned Lawrence without actually saying his name. Is he asked me one day about what is your net worth? Right. So that's how this entire journey begun. And we are here. I feel like I talk to you all the time without even seeing you, because you're currently in Washington, D.C. I'm here in West Palm Beach, Florida. And we're not talking on Clubhouse. We're talking on our Facebook group. You always tagging me, calling me out on Facebook, on Instagram. So we're constantly in discussions. Most times it's not about money too. Our conversations with you and I, or with our other partner in crime, Miss Lovely. So a lot of our conversations just really go deep, even pre-cancel Lawrence, you drop some gems, some really hard gems. So every Saturday, what we do is we come together collectively. We have a room on Clubhouse every Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock. We do a Saturday accountability session.
When you even said the whole, like, you went from negative 50 to 200,000, like, that made me feel proud, because at some point at the very beginning, when I was going through this entire process, I would say, this is how you do things. You get excited about financial literacy and that it could help a lot of different people. But if I had to be completely honest, I think you're the first person to actually take me seriously. And that speaks a lot to where we are, especially now that we're becoming wealthier. I think people don't understand, like, when we come, our backgrounds makes a lot of people around us just completely deflated, completely, it's almost like they're dead inside. They don't want to believe, they don't want to try, they don't want to confront this stuff. And, while we're going through this process of changing ourselves, it's already difficult enough. But if you have nobody there to even just to spitball some ideas off of, like, right. You also kind of, you run the risk of falling behind as well, because there's nobody around to say a word. So I do appreciate just, for you being around my entire journey, because people just like looked at me like, man, boo, here, Rich, shut up. Like, you poor ass, boo. Like, hey guys, what about fine? You shut up over there. I'm like, dang. So it does, I'm not gonna sit there and say I'm gonna cry about it, but ultimately, thank you for rooting for me, but rooting for yourself, because that's what I really wanted to see. I wanted to see people take those ideas, use it for themselves, and just reshape their lives. And I think that's what our accountability group has been doing. It's really balancing each other. Like, I know Lovely always is pushing for pure growth and to be the most rich person I've ever seen in my life.
Healthiest person ever.
And I'm out here in the corner like, I'm just trying to do me. But that push it pulls people along. That magnitude pulls people along to where they need to be. So even some of the conversation I have with you two ladies about some of these perspectives that women might have, it balances my tone.
Yeah.
It makes me feel a little bit more empathetic towards what I can say, so I could avoid quote unquote cancellation, or even trying to make it a little bit more succinct, because everybody's speaking, the same language but with different words.
Right. Absolutely. In our group is the voices and perspective that we have like you mentioned, it balances each other out, but it's also a clear on our different stories, but is similar within the journeys within our stories, right? Like you were mentioning, I was on a home team on the beginning of your journey.
What?
I was on a home team.
Everybody like, boo! I stir, boo! You
I
trash.
didn't like, but I think when if in retrospect, I think what really drawn me to you, because we knew each other since college. You went to FSU. I'm alumni from FAMU, right? So we knew each other.
Unfortunately,
FSU, boo. So we knew each other since college, and I think seeing your growth really attracted me to your journey, because I knew when you were making such and such amount, and I knew the struggles that you were having, looking for a job, trying to pivot yourself into the next point. So seeing that we have so much of similarities, right? Not only we're Haitian American, not only we're from poor communities as well, but we lack guidance. It was almost like the blind leading the blind, almost, right? Because I can fully say I was not prepared for college. I wanted to go to college. I knew that this was the route to go because I was being informed in school, like this is the route if you want to get wealthy and have a stable life, whatnot. But I was misguided, because once entering college, I was just doing everything and not doing anything at all, if that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was maintaining or keeping afloat.
Yeah, like busy doing nothing.
Busy doing nothing, exactly. And it was honestly by the grace of God, I was able to graduate, able to do kind of like the things out of the norm that got me to the place that I am now. But your particular journey was interesting because you stayed, you were making, I think, under poverty level. We could look back and say, oh, now, I think it was like under 30,000 or something like that.
Oh yeah, I was making the first job out of college. And that's because I barely even made it out of college. I just needed to start working because my student loans were piling up. And I was feeling, internally deflated, like a lot of people feel when they just can't figure it out. And I'm like, I'm better off going to work and maybe taking the CPA exam, and maybe that's going to help me out. I thought it was a brilliant idea, but ultimately the only job that, actually came back to me was offering $23,000 before tax as an admin secretary working for the Florida Department of Agriculture. So cool people. It wasn't that much of a job, but I made it what it was better. I made it better than what it was, if that makes sense. Even walking the first day, I'll never forget that one black guy, and it's rare that you even see black guys anywhere. So you're thinking he's gonna tell you something, cool, whatever, some uplifting words. It's like, oh, hey, you working out here? I'm like, cool, yeah. I'm working for the admin secretary. He's like, yeah. Nobody wants that job, man. Like everybody quits. Man, that job sucks. Like, and that was his words to me. I don't never know this guy's name. I don't know what he does. His parting words is like, man, that job sucked. He sent me up there with nothing but the most negative perspective of the job. And I thought to myself, like, well, I'm just gonna make it make it work for me.
Right.
And that was my goal. And I walked in there. The office had a view towards the Capitol. So I took that mentally and said, you know what? I have an office with a view. It was a shared office. Like it's all about perspective. Right. Then the work was kind of like it's a little bit like mundane, but I'd pack the stuff. I'd walk a certain route, and I kind of like because I had to go take the checks from one place to the Department of Revenue. And in that path, I just made a reality for myself where I was doing something more noble than what it was, right? I given it purpose. I given it scope, ideas. I'm, drinking my coffee. It felt like I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make it what it is. During my lunchtime, I'd visit the different areas around. I'd be like the free museums, free walkways, taking photos of different, like little small restaurants I'd see. And I made it what it was. And in my resume, I started to change the language. And like, all right, I work with over $1 million of revenue every week, that's what I was doing. I was processing these checks that I was bringing around, and technically that's what I was doing. And that pivoted by 6 months later into a job making $32K a year.
So it's almost like you finesse the language of it.
Yeah, you make the language what it is. You find the synonyms where it's supposed to be, and you find the lingo to the next job, and then you position yourself as you're discussing what you're doing with some level of passion. That's really what the people are looking for in these interviews. They want to know that, are you gonna bash the last job to try to get the new job, like kind of get like bash the ex to get the new boyfriend or whatever it is.
Right.
It makes no damn sense. Like, just focus on the passion that you have, expressing who you are. And even in that job, I pivoted maybe 6 months after that to making 64K. So in about like a year or so, I went from making that entry level 23K to 64. And about 2 years later, or 3 years later or something, I was making six figures.
So how did you sustain? Because like you went from increasing your salary, which was amazing within itself. Because a lot of people, as we both know, in Tallahassee, because is that a federal position or city position?
That was a state position. So
okay, it's state. I don't know why I say city. State, position. And they tend to stay.
Oh yeah, they stay and they just don't do anything.
In Tallahassee, and have a comfortable job and regular paycheck. So how did you, going from making 23,000 before taxes up to six figures? That's a huge jump. But how did you kind of sustain yourself and prevent the lifestyle creep? Because I know before you received the college, post employment after college, you were spending, like it was IG story. So
yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say this. That lifestyle like from college, I think was the lifestyle creep because everybody's just buying and spending on food, whatever it is. But right after when you realize you're broke and you bring in about like $1,000 a month, and it's only, and what was worse about that job, they only send you the paycheck once a month. So you had to wait the entire like you gotta they forced you to budget. There's nothing else you can do. Just pay for everything that's important and kind of like make the rest work until you get to the next paycheck. So I didn't even have like that like comfort to really do much more besides learn to really budget and understand where I was and how much I was making. I think what I had to do early on was make peace with it. I think some people get really frustrated psychologically. They feel like they're supposed to be making a certain thing at certain ages and whatnot, and that makes them feel internally bad. Right. And other people around them might, also pressure them the same way. But I found that, I had to create my own sense of happiness. I literally did. I had to decide for myself, like, well, obviously I can't go out every day, but I'll still be happy by, hey, I started doing the Spartan races and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to focus on working out. I'm going to focus on reading, improving my resume, improving how I do public speaking. And I also started giving back too. And I think that's a lot of things that people don't do in this day and age because they think giving back is free. And if it's free, what's the point? Right. But giving back in a way of like going to the high schools, the middle schools, the colleges, talk about financial literacy. I was working on my own public speaking. Even though I might not be the greatest, but I was working on it. And that translated on paper in my resumes. And that also translated in the interview. So it wasn't just me coming in there completely shocked, but I was able to speak to what I was doing with a certain passion. And like you said, maybe it finesses people, but I was comfortable enough in myself at that point. I wasn't like psychologically, I'm coming in there. I'm like, yo, you got to take me or not? Like, I'm fired. I'm this and that. I worked on my confidence so much that it does translate into something more tangible on paper. And that's what I learned over time. And that's how I got to the six figures.
Right. I'm just making a note of something. Self-development. I think culturally, right, when people think of self-development is investing monetarily in yourself. Like you need some form of exterior thing to kind of feel the boost of confidence that you can, place out into the world, this perception of how you want people to see you. But it seems so in your journey, because you mentioned about, Toastmasters, I was in Toastmaster as well. And you also mentioned about putting yourself out there, doing financial literacy, speaking to students about financial literacy and just really putting yourself out there. And all those things were free. And it's not in terms of, the traveling and such. You were optimizing your development within the things that you have control of.
Core values of the things that made me stand out is the fact that I was, giving back to my community, and women, generally like, you know what? I like this guy's character. And that at the very least, it gives me a boost of confidence to continue moving forward. I think that's something we want all to talk about, is I guess how some Black men are failing to launch out of home is because they're not finding value within themselves.
Okay.
And if you're not doing that, you can't translate that into an interview, and it won't translate into a paper. Because I also used to tell my buddies, there's a certain percentage of people right out of college, they got the job. If you didn't get the job right out of college, you're not in that percentage of people.
Right.
And that doesn't mean like you're worse than the other person. It's like that percentage already passed. Mm-hmm. So now you're in this new bracket of people that needs to work on themselves further and further develop what they can add and contribute to that might be different from what they would have had scholastically or even in their networks.
Right.
You're gonna have to put in some level of work. You can't cheat them completely. The system is not just gonna give you a director position. It's not going to give you a manager position. You're going to have to put in some work somewhere. And and because it's unfair, it's not equitable. I think some people don't understand. Like, you ain't going to walk into the job, and demand your salary. It's like, hey, I want $70K and I want to work from home. Like, and I also don't want to clock in. I don't want to be seen. I actually want to work just one day or something. I'm like, what?
Right.
That's not how this works.
And I think there's a huge significance of placing, an investment in yourself and self-development. And I can say this, I think the last two jobs, or the job that I received, started making at least above 45, right? Coming back from South Korea. I solely got that position because the part of the interview was I was interviewed between two directors. One was site and one was my manager. I had to present a topic or expertise topic because in my position, you talk to hospital providers, whatnot. So you have to kind of be confident to know what you're talking about, right? So I decided to discuss about how you can become an English teacher, making like normalizing that guide of, hey, you can actually teach abroad and this is the way you can do it, because I've been there, I've done it, I went through the process. I can honestly say if it wasn't for that and that experience, I wouldn't have got the job. And from there, salary increased from there, doing Toastmaster, doing some form of speaking engagement. Now people are looking at me to possibly speak or an engagement. And what that does is not only fuel my personal confidence, but I know that I'm providing a service for others. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for all these, things. What I'm doing is that placing more value within myself, but also now I'm figuring out there's a purpose of what I'm doing. And I can see, I think I'm framing that purpose a little bit more as time progressed, but the purpose within that is giving me a sense of pride of how I move. And it does develop your character as well, because people kind of understand what you are, what you value, the things that you want to do. So doing that, Lawrence, like, what do you think was your purpose? Do you feel like, okay, this helped me get to this level, to that level? Or do you think it was more along the lines that, okay, this worked for me, let me share this knowledge?
The beginning of the entire journey itself, like, especially when you're at that down on your luck, when you don't have the college degree that's going to speak to the experience, and you don't have the job, you're making the, like I said, I was bringing in about $1,000 a month. That's just really, you could barely survive off of that, amount of money anywhere. So, and that destroys your own personal confidence. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, especially as a man, you're not able to provide for yourself or for anybody else, because all you bring is $1,000. And on top of that, the people I was meeting, the ladies I was meeting, would say, "Oh yeah, you'll never be anything but broke." That was the words and the statements that were being made. And to me, I was more like, okay, maybe it's impossible. Well, you saying it's impossible. I'm like, maybe it's just an improbable assumption, right? Let's say maybe I can do this. I've read many people, stories, how they made it from, nothing to something. So maybe I can do the same thing. Maybe it's going to take some time. So I started mathematically trying to figure that part out in order to really prove to everyone around me. It wasn't even like out of anger. It's really to prove to everybody it's possible. you could really change your life within your lifetime. You don't have to wait until 40 years from now to figure it out. Like, you can actually put in the steps today to change it. And part of it is to understand that your story is not something that just happenstance. Like, you just sit there, like, you never watch a movie where the character just sitting around, ain't doing anything. It wouldn't be a movie you want to watch. You want to watch somebody that's actively trying and pushing and changing their own narratives and making those attempts. And that's what propelled me, even to this day, to get to the million. So I could say that, yeah, it was possible in under 15, and first, that idea was in under 15, that is possible, or even under 20. And the more I refined the techniques of like understanding financial literacy, it went to 15, then it went to 10. And now me and my wife, we're doing that in like 6 years. And when it does happen, people will be like, first they're gonna be like, oh, congrats, surprise, da 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 da. But then at some point, somebody's gonna be in the corner in the comments like, oh, he always had it made. Like,
no one's there, never satisfied.
No, it's like, of course it would have happened for you. You know, like there's no way. But the point is, it's like, that's why I've been writing the story. Because at some point somebody's gonna say those words, and I'm like, go back to everything I wrote, and you'll see for yourself that it wasn't easy. It wasn't anything that just happens in nothing, right? It's all this effort that I've been putting in that defined it. And now you have not only that I've written it for myself. That's not the point. Is that you can actually take those breadcrumbs and follow it all the way to the end of the line without losing a step.
Exactly, a guide. So, as I mentioned before, we do Saturday accountability sessions via Clubhouse. I will place the link below if you guys want to join our group, Wealth Multipliers. It's growing, and I'm really excited. People are joining and pitching in and discussing. So that's been great. Now, one of our topics or discussions this morning was on toxic culture.
Oh, I thought it was going to be Kevin Samuels.
No,
like,
maybe we'll get to that. Well, that's actually under the umbrella.
Okay, dang.
Under the umbrella of toxic culture, right? But you mentioned, and we had these talks before you got married, right? Of how toxic, men and women can be, but now it's more refined in a way that socially we're seeing much more of toxic culture amplified. In terms of, we're constantly bashing each other. We want to see fast cash. We want to have a luxury lifestyle of spending more and less investment within ourselves, healing, that sort of thing, taking more accountability, right? And I know you have shared some stories with me and you shared on the Clubhouse as well with others about women, and especially women that you're meeting in DC, who didn't want anything to do with you, right? Well, you were only placed as a monetary, money in dollars, and that was really your value. So as a man, as a young Black man, how did you prevent your own toxic culture, your own toxicity within yourself?
Wow, that's like a deep, emotional therapy scenario.
We do this all the time. So
I'm looking back into my life. Where was I?
How did you? And I'm just writing down like a therapist. How did you?
yeah. Like, I would say even at the very beginning, I grew up without my parents around, and that's a big focal point in my life. I don't think I would be the person that I am if those pathways were not laid out in front of me. My dad left my mom, while she was pregnant with me. I had an older sister, like 2 years older. So he literally just left, his family just hanging, right? Mm-hmm. And that really, created a rift between just the way my family's dynamic overall with my cousins and everybody else, that everything kind of went, in tailspin. So my mom, because she wasn't able to kind of raise us both and go to work, she sent us to live in Haiti. So that creates a friction between me now with my mom and my sister. And all of it just kind of falls apart because one person's decisions, right?
Right.
So I was forced at a very young age to kind of figure out life without the external forces around me. So even in some points I was crying and my aunt would say, stop crying or something like that. There was nobody really empathized with my situation like the way I needed it per se. So I said, you know what, the only thing I can do, and that maybe it's just an internal dialogue that happens because of the way I am. I was like, all right, I could cry or I could do something about it, right? I could just change my life. And that's always been the case. Like, whenever I'm put against the wall, I've always been the one to be like, well, it's either that I stay in this position and cry forever, or I do something about it that changes. And maybe it's because I watch one too many cartoons, those like Star Wars and, the hero story in which the hero perseveres. Right. I looked at him like, well, if the hero could do that, maybe I'm the hero of my story and I need to persevere and I need to change it. So I've also started looking the philosophy in those things, like the science fictions or the mangas, the animes and whatnot. The philosophy is that everybody or even the enemy themselves, right, has something that's hurt them in the past that creates them. And for me, I had to sit on one idea, is that I would not allow other people to drastically change me. That's it. I literally said that if anything, I want to be as tempered as possible to be the same Lawrence that you met 10 years ago that you're going to meet 10 years from now. Not to say that I won't change as a person, is that my core person, the happy person I was, the person I should be, should always reflect throughout time. And that's what I wanted to be consistent. Is why even my telephone number is still the same. It's always been the same telephone number. So when somebody said, "Oh yeah, I haven't talked to you in a while," I was like, my number is the same.
Right. The lies they tell.
Yeah, this is let them know my number's been the same since I got my first number. So you can't say that you can't hit me up because I'm not the one to switch up around on anybody else. So I want to be very consistent. I didn't want other people to change the core of who I am. I didn't want perceptions of others as well, because sometimes we tell stories about what other people what we think that other people think of us. Right. We say it to ourselves and we reverberate it over and over again, and sometimes it doesn't even make sense because you don't even know what that person is going through. Kind of like at work, I think some of the coworkers were saying, well, I was part of this organization called Blacks in Government. And some of the coworkers were saying, well, hey, the senior management doesn't want us to, have this organization because we're Black or something. Like they're insinuating in so many words that term. But then they asked me, hey, how did you find out about us? I'm like, oh, senior management told me. so it kind of like, and it shows how much the stories we tell about somebody else, what we project as far as our weaknesses into the world, that might not even be true. And from that point, I started thinking to myself, how many times that in my case, when I sit on the table and I think, oh yeah, they want me to fail. I'm like, well, why would my boss hire me just to want me to fail? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So I had to really rechange a lot of those focal points to say that not everybody's thinking in such dire ways about you. Sometimes they don't even know what's going on. Like when you're doing a speech and you're thinking everybody's paying attention, half the time when somebody else is speaking, I'm not paying attention. So nobody's criticizing you to this level that you're thinking that everybody else is. And that's what we need to understand.
I think there's a level of judgment, more or less, we have within ourselves that we place on others. In terms of, everyone criticizing, I can't do this. I don't want people looking at me this way. We were discussing this on previous Clubhouse as well as this morning discussion about no matter what you do, there's judgment, right? Like you're judging, and
when I said that blew my mind. That blew my mind when I said it. I was like, yeah, people always judge you. We judge the food we eat.
It's just human nature, right? Like no matter what you do, it's just going to be judgment. And I think for me, it has refined of how I position myself too, or sharing my stories or doing things consistently, because at one point starting my YouTube channel, I'm like, no, it has to be like this. I want it this way. It got to be. And then you realize just put so much of time into thinking what others may think of your channel. You haven't even started your channel.
You never did it. Entire mental episode about what if.
Like, what are you doing? And I think that would paralyze us from doing anything. Some people just ask me, how can you get up there and speak to people? Or I'm like, I don't know. I think
I just do it and move on.
I just do it. I do it, and unless I think as time progresses, I'm taking away that criticism more or less with people, but with myself, like, girl, just do it. Once you do it, it's done. Like,
it's out there. It's
you're
out
finished.
there in the universe. It's moved on. I never
That's
look
it.
back.
I think people think that we care as much as we really don't care as much as you think we do. If that makes sense. So that's been a huge focal point, and we always discuss this between you and I, and Lovely, about judgment, the fear, and it really, really does paralyze us to doing anything. Like we were discussing about investing, how people are just afraid to invest, and they're just putting money in, and and that's it. Just let it go. Like it's out there now. It's being so
we're moved on. Like the first step, you take it. You got to take the first step.
You get right. You have to take the first step. But with your journey, and you've been really transparent on social media about your highs, your lows, your experiences, like discussions. So it's been really transparent. Tell us. Well, I know this, but tell the YouTube ether, about how is being transparent and sharing stories has kind of found your own voice in doing the things that you now found purpose in.
I would say that I hate fear. There's something about it that kind of, like you said, it debilitates people. It closes you off, and then you end up doing absolutely nothing. It's not like it does anything progressive with it. You just sit there, and then at the end of the day, you've provided nothing to the world.
Right.
And part of even the beginning of thinking about, like, I guess one of the things, biggest money fear that people will figure out that you have this amount of money or don't have that much amount of money. That's one of the biggest fears now in modern society, right? And because of fear, I felt it too. I sat there and like, why am I afraid? I was in the Marine Corps. I jumped out of plane. My mind was like, what the hell? I've driven down I-95 at 100 and something. I'm like, I'm the same guy that did all of this, and why am I afraid just to say my student loans are 125,000? Like, it's not like it's gonna change. It's not like a judgment call on who I am. It's just the way it is. It's facts. So I just put it out there. So like a lot of people, I start off the same way. I just really, bravery itself is not the absence of fear. It's what you do after fear.
Right.
It's the steps that you take right afterward. And you say, okay, I am afraid, so therefore I did this. Or I did the other thing and it ran away. I'd rather move forward. So I kind of just do it and see where it goes anyways.
Right.
So part of that is really to challenge other people. And being transparent is also to find commonality with somebody else as well. To let them know that you're not alone, that you have, like, somebody else has, student loans debt, they have credit card debt, they don't know if they're going to get married or not, that kind of thing. Sharing everything, because the truth is we all have the same shared human experience of figuring things out. No matter if you had, two parents with you, no matter if you're a step parent out there or whatever, in the end of the day, everybody's growing up and trying to make sense out this world that we were born into.
Exactly. And I remember mentioning to you a while back about, I'm not sure if it's me, but I'm always finding personal finance members of the community, financial members of the community. They always have one or two pictures, like the outskirt, the scene is very scenic, the trees are hiking. It's like a commercial or something. And I remember there's a photo of you. I don't know where you were.
Over a cliff in Shenandoah. I know this
cliff.
Yeah.
It was a cliff. And I'm just saying, and I remember when I went to Madrid, it was a few photos out there. I'm just like, is this what financial literacy does? Is this it? And I remember saying to you is, do we come to a place within our journey of just money, the self-development, things that we do, because it's more about money, right? Things that we do to feel at peace.
You actually nailed it right then and there. It's just who you, end of the day, I guess those pictures where everybody's just out there.
Out there. I'm like,
it's because they're literally living their lives. That means there's nothing else. There's no, I got to get dressed to be at this social event type of scenario. You find that with a lot of people that really have money mastery, they don't care about society and how society positions what wealth is. So you won't see a lot of the true financial people with financial literacy backgrounds. You know, hey, it's a photo of me in front of a Range Rover. That's not what you're gonna see. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna literally see them just either with their family, with, you know, at the beach, you know, doing hiking, being active and engaged in life. And I think that's what financial literacy is, the opportunity to just live your life. I think without it, remember growing up, like we didn't have money to do it anywhere. Like nowhere. Like absolutely like summer vacation, you at the crib. Hey, you know, like holidays, you know, Thanksgiving area, you at the crib. You know what I'm saying? Like what
we typically any level in Georgia for summer. Yeah. My mom was a migrant worker, so we had to travel with her. Like our vacation was in Georgia.
That was it. That was it. That was the extent of how far we've gone, because without, you know, good money management, there's a certain level of a limit that is arbitrarily set in your life. Right. And I think a lot of people our age, in our age group, we've used credit card to furnish ourselves into the middle class, whereas a lot of us didn't have that money to begin with. Right. And all it's going to do is on the back end, which is the part that really matters in your in the later 30s, your 40s and your 50s, your life is going to start shrinking. You're going to start seeing a lot of people that used to be super active, like in their 20s and early 30s, like super active on social media. You're going to start seeing the pool shrink, because they're going to come to terms with the fact that they just don't have the money to keep up with this anymore. Right. Eventually, the credit card company will be like, well, we ain't going to give you this much credit anymore, so you can't just be riding out anymore. And eventually, it all catches up to us. And for me and my wife now, it's like, I'm trying to keep it in such a way that we still have a lot of options for us and our kids, so they could... I want to teach my kids things. Yeah. I want to share the world with them. I wish they'd be like, hey, Dad, I want to go to Egypt. I'm like, back. Let's do it. But, you know, I want to be able to be in a position where I can. But a lot of our parents, they struggled. They put in the work. That's for sure. But they couldn't do anything when it comes to providing us with any extra to really feed our mind. I want to say extracurricular activities, just the extra. Everything was extra for them. If you ask for $10, $15 for a field trip, man, you know, you'd be surprised if you even get it. You know, like, or you won't even get the insurance money for the field trip, and that's all you really needed. And then you're not going on the field trip. Right. That was our childhood. At least that was my childhood.
Yeah, because I'm grateful to have like other resources, because, you know, of course, my mom couldn't afford like the amount of resources and the exposure and the experiences that I have. When I was growing up, I had Girl Scouts, I was in the dance troupe, and I actually became active in sports, in flag football, soccer, because I knew it gave me opportunity to travel to other schools, to meet, you know, the other teams and see another school, because most times people are just stuck in town, they're not doing much. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this free opportunity to do something else. So I was really grateful that I had my, you know, Girl Scouts, learning certain skills. I'm able to travel, being exposed to things. So that was much of my childhood. But I'm noticing and realizing as I grow older is that if it wasn't those things, I don't know where I would be, you know, 10, 20 years without having those exposures and experiences. And now that I know more and been exposed to even more things, I want my children to experience that. So I absolutely agree about positioning yourself to have options, and to place yourself in positions for others to have options as well. So
yeah, and that's just, it goes back to what the guys, I think a lot of times those guys that I call the guys in Florida that I grew up with, in our state, there wasn't a lot of extracurricular activities. And the more and more they opted to have like adult education at the high school level, they took away a lot of the after school programs that were for the high school kids. Like they were doing one thing positive and one aspect where they're helping a lot of adults attain a certain level of the GED or anything like that. But the more and more that took over, the less after school programs were available, which left a lot of young, you know, especially a lot of young Black men without much anything. Because your coach sometimes almost like filled in like a pseudo dad. Right. Because there was no in between. There was kids your age, like your middle school, high school friends. There were maybe people that had dads that were a lot older, like in their 40s and 50s per se, or probably their late 40s. And then in between, there is nothing. Like we didn't see the guys that were 20. We didn't see the guys that were 30. We just literally, there's a gap there. And that's what you now see in society today. You see a lot of young men that we don't know what we were doing. Like even now I could say as a whole, as a group, we don't know what we were doing. We don't have an actual plan. Right. Because there was no plan in front of us. There was nobody there. And that's part of being, like we talked about, being transparent, stepping out there, going to the schools, because those kids need to see people in between. So I started thinking myself, like, instead of, complaining about people not being there for me, right, being my mentor or whatever it was, then I don't want to also fail the next generation by not being there for them. So even the last 2 or 3 years, because one of my friends was actually a teacher down there, I'd be able to actually do all the extra stuff I used to do. But now I'm like, I wish I could go back to the high schools, the middle schools and colleges and really kind of impart anything, because they need to see people in between.
Right. In between. And I think that's why your story resonated with me, because I was seeing you within the journey. It wasn't the complete pinnacle of it all on Fox News just tearing us down, you know what I'm saying? You're not there yet. You're not there yet.
Out there in the Fox News to talk about my plans.
So I think too, and I do resonate and think about that as well, is there is a guide in breadcrumbs and a plan that you have put out there. I have followed. I created my own plan now to do things. So there is a guide out there, but it's people that have to be willing to go out and filter out the nonsense, the noise. I post all the time is noise, because we're constantly feeding ourselves into the quote unquote toxic culture of a luxury lifestyle, the Instagram worthy boyfriend look, right? Oh
yeah, me and somebody's son. I'm like, what?
Right. So we're constantly feeding ourselves within that umbrella of toxic culture. And ultimately, too, what it does is just it pushes us or expedite the process of, delayed gratification a bit, or really focusing on the things that you need to focus within the journey of just finances and budgeting and all that good stuff. I'm learning more, if anything, about myself, what I really value. And for me, I think the theme is constantly talking to my friends, like hanging out, being around, where I don't need to go out and do that. Now I got a house. You come over.
Oh, like you don't have a house.
Like you
have a house
over to just hang out and us touching bases, but refining my values, like what I really would like and I enjoy and I like to discuss with people, because it brings happiness, personal happiness to me. It's helping people and helping my family, helping my friends. So I think you're constantly learning within that journey of it all.
Yeah. And it's shocking too, because I think a lot of people go with the get rich quick strategy. Yeah, got to get it as soon as possible, but it takes them longer for some reason. And the what I'm realizing in inverse, the path that we've chosen to just kind of just, invest money or do this or do that, it seems like it's supposed to take longer, but it isn't, because we got houses now, we got the investments now. When you said you got 200 stack, I'm like, already? That's really from whatever time that is, that's a 250% increase. From whatever time you started, if you want to count it all the way back. What year you started?
2016, 2017. We're in 2021.
2021. So that's 250 divided by 4 or something. Whatever that average is, that's a
better increase too. I told you about that.
Oh, see, like you out here doing all the time, like equity in the game. Homeowner. But all the stuff we were told that was impossible. Like, remember those conversations you have with friends, like, oh, we'll never be able to get a home. Oh, I'm looking at people now. I was like, do you want to get a home? That's the question. If you don't want to get a home, just say you don't want to. Just exit stays left, because if that's what you hanging up on, right? I don't think it's realistic, because it's possible, because a lot of people are doing it and they're doing it all the time. It's not like an one-off. It's not just a single story, which is the theory that's out there, that only a select few would succeed. It's not oppression by any means. If any last one of us could become something in this day and age. And I think that's the cancelable statements. Like there is racism, there is systematic issues that exist in our society for sure. And there's also wealth that's been tied into blood money, either be through diamonds or even to slave labor that's in the past that's other people have carried for the rest, for their lifetime. But there's a lot of things that we can do today that can really change us fundamentally. Like I'm the type of person like, yo, come to my crib, hey, I always technically got food. So on a Saturday, I got drinks, I guess, you don't have to go to, the brunch, or, hey, you want to link up so we could go for a run, that kind of thing. Right. It's always these little things we can do to add a little bit more value to ourselves that changes us in the long term. Mm-hmm. That's the goal.
And it's not always just, being so restricted. I know some people like
we travel more than other people. Come on.
Right, like live 10-15% of their income. Like they're really like putting over the edge a bit, right? Because I recall when I started, I'm like, okay, Lawrence, I can do this, I can do that.
I could do $100, 100.
Yeah, I could do this, I could do that. I was just so excited, like, and I was just pushing myself over the edge in terms of what I was actually bringing in after everything. It was just like, and I recall you asking me, are you enjoying the process? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So for me, it's not depriving yourself. I'm not depriving myself. I enjoy going out whenever necessary, whenever I feel like it. But I do really like traveling. It could be domestic, it could be international, depending on what I'm doing. So I'm not depriving myself. What I'm doing is just shifting what I really value. Right.
Like you're not depriving yourself for the sake of it, but you're doing something that really fits within you. Because we could go out all the time. For me, I don't mind going out, but if I did it every day, it wouldn't have the same punch to it when I really go kick it. Like, like that's the thing that I found, especially growing up. It's like people are just doing it all the time. And for them, I dated one girl. I think she went out like every day of the week. I didn't even know people could do that at the time. I was like, what? Every day? It exists? Yeah, like every day, like Saturday, Sunday as well, Sunday night.
Like Monday too?
Yeah, like Monday. It's like, and I found out through her that people were doing this, and it's not something I care for. I don't mind going like a Friday or a Saturday. I'm cool after that. Like my energy is good. Yeah. Like some people, their energy is different. So you do have to find out what your energy is. And exactly like you said, some people, when they go to brunch, their energy is just recapped up. Yeah. But then transfer that. Now you're not just going to brunch. Be the person that does the event. You know what I'm saying? So you become the socialite doing this. And then at some point you might even get paid for doing this.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I want to go travel. Like, okay, then bring the camera, take a couple good photos. Who knows? You might get, picked up for doing modeling overseas, or even get paid just to travel. Right. Like there's all these little things that we can do to really shift our understanding of what, managing money really truly means. That means you're just living differently based on what you really love.
Right. Exactly. Well, Lawrence, we are close to the hour.
Ooh, I didn't say nothing cancelable. I'm trying to find a couple words.
Yeah,
I know, but so I'm trying to find some words right now. I gotta say some really toxic.
It's pending, but I'm so appreciative that I know you pre-cancel, Lawrence. But before we wrap it up, let the people know where to find you. Some final thoughts.
All right. Well, you find me, it's very simple. Like you find me on the neighborhoodfinanceguy.com. I write a lot on the blogs. You can also find me on Instagram, where I share a lot of financial literacy tips through photos, ideas, topics. You can also find us on Clubhouse on Saturdays, majority of the time, if we're not too busy, doing like a recap and accountability group. But ultimately, that I would like to leave people with a statement that I heard recently. It's like, changing your minds means that you're still thinking. Mm-hmm. And that means a lot of times we're going to conversations without a truly honest approach, where we're basically thinking that we already know everything. Right. And we're going to die on this cross, whatever that cross might be. But ultimately, our die on the hill, saying, one statement or another. But I can never find anybody that in the past has not changed some form of their opinion about something they just really found out about. Like today, we talked about immigration from a different perspective, from a person that really struggled trying to figure out who they were, throughout the process because it was unfair to her as a young, as an infant per se,
right.
Trying to figure out all the different details of being stuck in a country that seemingly doesn't want her and a country that she, really doesn't know.
Right.
So we have to have these kind of hard discussions that really kind of changes, a little bit my focal point, because I was coming in with that energy like, yo, hey, the new administration said go home. But ultimately I'm like, now I'm listening to so many other people and their stories, and it's difficult. Yeah. So, and that's why I try to tell people, like, America might seem bad, to some person over the surface for whatever experience that they had on a day-to-day basis. But I've known Haitian people going through Brazil, through the Amazon. I'm like, you're not even a hiker or nothing. You don't have the gear for this stuff. Like going through South America, through Mexico, passing 2 or 3 borders, jumping and getting all the way through just to go to America, is to say that there's something here that is inherently, like, people want this. They want to be here. They want to have the opportunity to even make some decisions that will change and carry their lives. Don't waste your time just like sitting in the corner mad and angry and crying like I did when I was 6 or 5.
Yeah.
Really start deciding the type of story you want to live. Be the hero.
Absolutely. Well, on that note,
I did deep.
You go deep. The pre-cancellation is still
open
there.
Your mind. Open your mind. Open your third eye.
On that note, thank you so much, Lawrence, for doing this with me. I'll have you back in the near future, of course. Yeah. I'm also going to make sure I place his social media platforms. His website, The Neighborhood Finance Guy, is dope. I find myself going on it from time to time just to get references or just refresh the things that I have done in the past that have worked, right? So I'm always going that. That is like my financial
hey man, you need to write it. You need to write this story about how you get to 200,000. You might get to maybe when you get to 250. Maybe that's what you want to talk about. That quarter mil. You know what I mean? Quarter million.
I think that's a great post. Quarter mil.
Like quarter milli out here.
I think that would be great. So I'll get there soon enough. But thank you again. If you haven't done so, guys, make sure you subscribe to my channel, like, share, all that good stuff.
Smash that subscribe button.
Yeah, smash that subscribe button. I really appreciate you guys for watching. So on that note, in the meantime, in between time, be safe, be kind, peace.